Disclaimer: this content is for mature audiences only. Viewer discretion is advised. I never thought I'd find myself in this situation. Sitting across from my wife at the dinner table, the soft clinking of utensils the only sound between us, I could feel the weight of unspoken words pressing down on the air. Then, with a calmness that sent a shiver down my spine, she looked me in the eye and said, "I think you should spend a night with her." I froze, my fork hovering midair. Her? I asked, though I already knew who she meant. My ex-girlfriend, the woman I once loved, the one who had left behind both beautiful memories and painful scars, the woman my wife had never met, yet somehow seemed to understand played a significant role in shaping the man I had become. Most people would assume a statement like that meant trouble in a marriage, maybe even the beginning of the end. But my wife wasn't angry. She wasn't insecure. In fact, she said it with a kind of certainty that made me question everything I thought I knew about relationships, love, and trust. Why would my wife suggest something like this? Was this a test? A sign that she was losing interest in me? Or was there something deeper, something I hadn't yet realized? The idea should have been absurd, impossible even, but the longer I sat there, staring at her unwavering expression, the more I found myself wondering, what if? What if one night could change everything? Would it bring clarity or chaos? The decision wasn't as simple as it seemed. My ex wasn't just a memory. I knew that much. She was a chapter I had left unfinished, a part of my past I had never fully closed the door on. And now, with my wife's unexpected blessing, that door was wide open once again. But what would happen when I walked through it? Would I find closure or something else? Before I tell you what happened that night, let me ask you this. If your partner gave you permission to reconnect with someone from your past, would you do it? Drop your thoughts in the comments and let's talk about it. Would you be able to handle it? Or is this crossing a line that should never be blurred? Stick around because things are about to get complicated. I stared at my wife, waiting for her to laugh, to take it back, to say she was just testing me. But she didn't. She just sipped her wine, calm as ever, as if she hadn't just shaken the ground beneath me. "You're serious?" I asked, my voice quieter than I expected. She nodded. "I trust you," she said simply, "and I trust us." Trust. That word sat heavy between us. It wasn't that I doubted her trust in me. It was that I wasn't sure if I trusted myself in this situation. Not because I had any plans to betray her, but because I didn't know what spending a night with my ex would stir up inside me. I had spent years burying certain emotions, convincing myself that the past was the past for a reason. But now I was being given a chance to open that door again, and I didn't know what I'd find on the other side. "Why?" I finally asked. "Why would you want me to do this?" She set her glass down and folded her hands in front of her. "Because I don't believe in pretending feelings don't exist. If there's something unresolved, I'd rather you face it than spend the rest of our lives wondering about the what ifs." The what ifs, the two words that had haunted me more times than I cared to admit. What if I had done things differently? What if we had fought harder? What if we had never broken up in the first place? I thought I had locked those questions away a long time ago, but my wife had just handed me the key. That night, I barely slept. My mind raced through memories I hadn't thought about in years. The way my ex used to laugh, how she would tuck her hair behind her ear when she was nervous. The last fight we had, the one that shattered everything. The way we walked away from each other, both too proud to turn back. I told myself this wasn't about rekindling anything. It was about closure, about answering the questions that still lingered in the back of my mind. But was that really true? Or was I just telling myself what I needed to hear? The next day, I picked up my phone and hesitated for a long time before finally sending the message. It was simple, just a casual, "Hey, how have you been?" But even before I hit send, my hands felt clammy, my heart beating just a little too fast. Minutes passed, then an hour, then two. And then her name popped up on my screen. I swallowed hard before opening the message. "I was just thinking about you." A chill ran through me. Coincidence? Or something else? I hadn't even seen her yet, and already the past was creeping back in. I stared at the message, my pulse quickening. "I was just thinking about you." It was such a simple sentence, yet it carried so much weight. Was it just something people said, or did she really mean it? And why now, after all this time? I hesitated before typing a response. "Really? That's surprising." A few seconds later, the typing bubble appeared, and my breath caught in my throat. "Yeah, I had a dream about you last night. It was weird, but also kind of nice." My fingers hovered over the keyboard. This was already taking a turn I hadn't expected. Part of me wanted to ask about the dream, to dig deeper. But another part knew that would only pull me further into something I wasn't sure I should be stepping into. Before I could overthink it, I sent a safe reply. "Funny timing. I was actually reaching out because I wanted to see you." Seconds turned into minutes. This time, she didn't reply right away. I imagined her staring at her screen, maybe debating whether she should respond at all. Finally, my phone buzzed. "Are you sure that's a good idea?" That question hit me harder than I expected. Was it? Probably not. But my wife had given me permission. That made it okay. Right? "I don't know," I replied honestly, "but I think it's something I need to do." Another pause. Then, "Okay, when?" I let out a slow breath. It was happening. We settled on Friday night, 2 days from now. That gave me time to think, to process, to convince myself that this wasn't a mistake. But as the hours passed, the doubts started creeping in. Why was my wife so calm about this? Most people would have reacted differently, wouldn't they? Was she truly as secure as she seemed, or was there something she wasn't telling me? And then there was my ex. What was she thinking right now? Was she as curious as I was? Did she still think about us? Did she regret anything? That night, I found myself lying awake again, staring at the ceiling. My wife slept soundly beside me, her breath steady, peaceful. She had said she trusted me. That should have been reassuring, but instead, it made me feel more uneasy. Was I about to break that trust, even if I had her permission? Or was I about to discover something that could change everything? Drop your thoughts in the comments. If you were in my wife's position, would you be okay with this? And if you were in mine, would you go through with it? Because one thing was certain, there was no turning back now. The drive to meet her felt longer than it should have. Every red light, every slow-moving car felt like the universe giving me one last chance to turn around. But I didn't. I kept going. My hands gripped the steering wheel a little too tightly. My mind played out every possible scenario. Would it be awkward? Would it feel like old times? Would I regret this the second I saw her? When I finally pulled into the cafe parking lot, I spotted her immediately. She was sitting by the window, stirring a drink absent-mindedly, lost in thought. Even after all these years, she still looked the same, yet somehow different. Time had changed us both, but there was something familiar in the way she moved, in the way she tucked her hair behind her ear like she used to when she was nervous. I stepped inside, my heart pounding harder than I wanted to admit. As soon as she looked up and met my eyes, everything else faded. "Hey," she said, a soft smile playing on her lips. "Hey," I echoed, sitting across from her. For a moment, we just looked at each other, not saying anything. It wasn't uncomfortable, but it wasn't easy either. There was too much history between us. Too many Words left unsaid, she broke the silence first. So, your message surprised me. I surprised myself, I admitted. I didn't think I'd ever reach out. She studied me for a second before leaning in slightly. Then, why did you? I hesitated. The truth felt complicated. Did I come for closure, or was there something more? I could still back out, keep things surface level, but something in her expression made me want to be honest. My wife suggested it, I finally said. That caught her off guard. She blinked. Wait, your wife? I nodded. Yeah, she thought it might help. I don't know, clear things up. Her lips parted slightly as if she wanted to say something but wasn't sure how. Then, after a pause, she leaned back, letting out a small laugh, though it wasn't one of amusement. That's unexpected? Tell me about it. Before I could say anything else, she looked down, fingers tracing the rim of her cup. Do you think she really wants this? I opened my mouth to respond, but the words got stuck. Did I actually know the answer to that? And more importantly, did I really want to find out? I swallowed hard, feeling the weight of her question settle between us. Did my wife really want this? Or was there something else at play? Something I hadn't even considered? I think she does, I said, though the words felt uncertain even as they left my mouth. She said she trusts me. She studied me for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then slowly, she nodded. Okay, she said. So, what now? That was the question, wasn't it? What now? I had no real plan, no idea where this conversation was supposed to lead. I just knew that sitting across from her again, being in this space, felt different than I expected. It wasn't just nostalgia. It was something deeper, something unspoken still hanging between us. But before I could answer, my phone vibrated on the table. My wife's name flashed across the screen. For some reason, a strange sense of guilt crawled up my spine as I reached for it. Give me a sec, I said, standing and stepping outside to take the call. Hey, I answered, trying to keep my voice steady. Hey, she said. There was something off about her tone, too light, too casual. How's it going? I glanced through the cafe window. My ex was watching me, waiting. It's fine, we're just talking. There was a pause. Then my wife said something that sent a cold wave through me. I'm outside. For a second, I thought I misheard. What? I'm outside, she repeated, her voice still calm but firm. I'm looking at you right now. My breath caught in my throat. I turned slowly, scanning the parking lot, and then, just across the street, I saw her. My wife, standing near her car, watching me. My stomach dropped. This wasn't part of the plan. What are you doing here? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She didn't answer right away. Then, in a voice that sent shivers down my spine, she said, I just needed to see it for myself. See what? The moment? The decision I was about to make? Or was this a test all along? I turned back toward the cafe, where my ex was still waiting, unaware of what was happening outside. My wife was on one side, my past on the other. And suddenly, I felt like I was standing in the middle of something much bigger than I had realized. What was I supposed to do now? Would you go inside or walk across the street? Let me know in the comments. Because no matter what choice I made, one thing was certain. Nothing would ever be the same after this. My feet felt glued to the pavement. A single step in either direction would change everything. I looked at my wife across the street. She stood still, arms crossed, her expression unreadable. Not angry, not sad, just waiting. And then I turned toward the cafe window, where my ex sat, unaware of what was happening just outside. I took a breath, forcing my mind to settle. What was I really doing here? Had I come for closure? For answers? Or was I just looking for something I didn't even understand myself? I exhaled sharply and made my decision. I walked across the street. My wife didn't move as I approached. Her eyes searched mine, waiting. But before I could say anything, she spoke first. I had to know, she said quietly. If I didn't come, I would have spent the rest of my life wondering. I swallowed hard. And? She hesitated for a moment, then said, "You weren't going to come back on your own, were you?" The words hit me harder than I expected, and the truth was, I didn't know. Would I have walked away from my ex if my wife hadn't shown up? Or would I have let myself get pulled into something I shouldn't? I looked down, searching for an answer I wasn't sure I had. But before I could respond, she did something that completely blindsided me. She smiled, not a bitter smile, not forced, just understanding. "I wanted you to see it," she said softly. "To see her, to see what you really felt." Confusion twisted in my chest. "What are you saying?" She sighed, tilting her head slightly. "You already have your answer, don't you?" And then, suddenly, I realized. I did. I had spent years holding on to something unfinished, convincing myself that my past with my ex had loose ends that needed tying up. But standing there, looking at my wife, the woman who truly saw me, who had given me the space to figure things out without fear or insecurity, I knew the truth. The past wasn't unfinished. It had ended exactly the way it was meant to. I turned back toward the cafe one last time, and for the first time that night, I felt a strange sense of peace. My ex and I were a story that had already been written, and nothing, not one night, not one conversation, was going to change that. I looked back at my wife and nodded. "Let's go home." As we walked away, I heard my phone buzz in my pocket. I glanced down and saw a message from my ex. "I get it now. Goodbye." I didn't need to respond. Some words didn't need answers. Some stories didn't need new chapters. Some doors were meant to stay closed. As we drove home, the silence between us wasn't heavy. It was comfortable. My wife had one hand resting on her lap, the other casually draped over the armrest. No tension, no accusations, just the quiet understanding that something had shifted, not between us, but within me. I glanced over at her, studying the way she gazed out the window, her reflection flickering in the dim city lights. She had given me something I didn't even know I needed: clarity. "You knew this would happen," I finally said, my voice softer than I intended. She turned to me with a small, knowing smile. "I hoped it would." I nodded, gripping the steering wheel a little tighter. "I don't think I ever really wanted to go back," I admitted. "I think I just needed to see her one last time and know it wasn't mine to hold on to anymore." My wife reached for my hand, intertwining her fingers with mine. "That's why I let you go," she whispered, "because I knew you'd find your way back." And just like that, I felt lighter. The what-ifs that had haunted me for years were finally gone. There was no unfinished business, no lingering doubt. The past belonged where it was, behind me. As we pulled into our driveway, I exhaled deeply, as if releasing a breath I had been holding for far too long. My wife squeezed my hand one last time before stepping out of the car, and as I followed her inside, I knew one thing for sure. Some people are part of your story forever, and some are just a chapter, and tonight I had finally turned the last page. Would you have handled it differently? Let me know in the comments. And if you think this is the end of the story, you might be wrong. Stay tuned.